Hello and welcome to another episode of Uh-Oh Politics. I am one of your co-hosts, Jared Valenzola, joined as I am every scheduled taping of this podcast by my friend Ann Deming. Ann,
Hello. Happy to be joining you.
pleasure to be here. We decided to mix it up a little bit, do a little curveball on the hosting duties. I will take the hosting chair for this afternoon, evening, morning, or whatever moment of the day you decided to tune in to this podcast.
You've won the house, so the gavel has been turned over to you. So,
Yes, and unfortunately, the production team will file a motion to vacate the chair, and I will be
right,
thrown out.
unceremoniously.
So we have a couple of things to discuss here that are salient to what is going on in the world.
Uh-oh.
A rough draft of some potential topics and Biden poll numbers. Sagging considerably. There was a sex scandal in one of the Senate hearing rooms.
Oh my.
And of course, since we last chatted, the House of Representatives utilized a very rare procedural move to expel one of their members, the first time that has happened in 20 or so years. George Santos, representative from New York. So we will ban. Well, he is still alive. I just want to be clear. He did not pass. His political career is.
It's just getting started.
Probably over, or it could just be getting started. That is true. Maybe he's looking for an entertainment career. I don't know. But George Santos is, as of, again, this taping, very much alive. So, Ian, right now we are a few weeks away. We are 4 weeks away, again, from the moment of this program, from the Iowa caucuses for the Republican Party. But in the midst of that, we've seen some poll numbers for President Biden that I believe are continuing along a trend of concerning for Democrat Party power brokers and many Democrat Party pundits. What do you make of President Biden's sagging poll numbers? And do you think that between now and next November, because I believe he'll be the nominee, we can discuss that further as well, that he will be able to recover in the polls?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I cannot see the future. So thanks for listening to Uh-Oh Politics.
We'll see you again next time.
Yeah, maybe. I think that Biden's polling has been bad for a while, but right now we're seeing it steadily declining among Democrats. We're not seeing Biden's poll numbers fall evenly amongst Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. Biden lost Republicans a long time ago, basically his first day in office. Right now he seems to be at odds with the more progressive wing of his party, particularly with how he's been approaching the war, the Israel-Palestine war. I think that there are some independents as well who take issue with the way he's tried to negotiate with Republicans for aid to Ukraine as well. And I think Biden is not someone who, at least in the public eye, has a lot of wins recently that the public can point to and say, this is what he's doing as president. A lot of it is stuff that is mucked up by a lack of bipartisanship and a Republican House that is not exactly going to just give a blank check to Biden.
Well, I think they're having a hard time with their own internal partisanship in the Republican House anyway.
Which has been going on pretty consistently. I mean, with the vote to put Kevin McCarthy in the seat, to remove him from the seat, to put someone back in the seat with Mike Johnson. Republicans have certainly been divided over a lot of different issues with their own party members.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I think Democrats have been suffering from for a while, and you can look back to the Obama administration. Obama's administration was great for Republicans in the sense that we built a considerable bench. And Democrats weren't able to do that.
Sure.
It's how frankly, it's why they and I don't want to say saddled with Hillary Clinton. On paper, Hillary Clinton had the resume.
Yeah.
Awful candidate who ran an equally awful campaign, an entitled campaign, the belief that she was owed the presidency of the United States.
Not sure I would agree with that, but yeah.
Well, I think when you go into some historical readings, I think, again, I always point to the fact that she's married to one of the smartest politicians of the late 20th century, in Bill Clinton.
Oh, Bill Clinton.
Yes, and in one of the debriefs, for lack of a better term, that I actually read on CNN, was President Clinton was telling Hillary and the Clinton campaign, you need to go and campaign in Michigan. And they refused. They didn't do really any stops in Michigan. Of course, Trump became the first Republican to win Michigan since Reagan in '84, or maybe Bush in '88. But the point is that the Rust Belt, the big blue wall, wasn't there because she generally ignored it. And then, of course, you had the tweet a week before the election, happy birthday to this former future president, which was a picture of her when she was a little girl. And
aged like milk, as
it
they
aged
say,
like milk. So just counterpointing, I think she felt a little entitled to the presidency, and I think she believed it was hers to lose, which, in all honesty, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I think that in that instance, the mood of the country wasn't red. But back to President Biden for a moment. The Democrats right now suffer from a lack of a bench. Now, granted, the 2022 midterms actually helped. I think the 2018 midterms helped them begin to rebuild that, whereas the Republicans had built a massive bench. I believe, and I don't think we've really kicked this around on this program yet. Of course, we had the big Gavin Newsom, Ron DeSantis debate, which I didn't understand
that
the point
huge
of.
debate.
Did
yeah.
not understand the point. I watched it. I'm a nerd. I'm a junkie. I watched it, political junkie. I don't know why I watched it, but why am I watching two governors of two states I don't live in argue about policies? But I digress. Of course, there is this underpinning, at least in Republican circles, but I think it's existent elsewhere, because I think people are looking for a different answer to Joe Biden. Most have honed in on Gavin Newsom. He emphatically said in that debate he will not be a candidate for president. He will not take the nomination. And that if, and I don't know if he said this or this was in the analysis after, but if something were to happen to Biden, then it would be Vice President Harris who would be up next. Do you believe, A, that Joe Biden will be the nominee? I'll answer first. Yes, I do.
Yeah.
You dance with the one who brought you.
Yeah.
B, if he is not, though, who do you see within the Democratic Party that could be the standard bearer in 2024? And we are going to talk about where the Republican primary is trending
you bring up a significant problem that the Democrats have, which is there is no person who's just waiting in the wings and has to push off their presidential bid to 2028 out of respect to Biden for his second term. There really doesn't seem to be anyone like that. And to your point on Gavin Newsom, I believe Gavin Newsom was one of the people that Dean Phillips was actively courting to try to get him to run. The problem that Dean Phillips ran into and why he's running a campaign is because he was concerned about Biden's electability. And so he was trying to find anyone else to run against Biden, and he couldn't find anyone. So he had to do it himself. So yeah, Gavin Newsom is someone who is not interested in running for the nomination that is presumably Biden's.
Right.
And yeah, the problem is if something were to happen to Biden, who takes over then? And yeah, it's, the answer is just Kamala Harris. In the same way that Biden's the assumed nominee, if Harris has to step into the role, then she will be the presumed nominee as well.
One of the biggest reasons why I think Trump lost in 2020 and why Biden won, and I think it's a big reason again in 2022, is Democrats, and I'm a political operative as well. I'm a lot less so since I've now become elected. Democrats functionally had a plan.
Sure.
And they executed it in 2020. They knew how they were organized. They got their voters to vote early by mail. They got their voters out there.
Yeah.
Republicans are starting to catch up, though, and there is an attitude change within the Republican Party. Had that attitude been existing in the Republican Party, I think there may have been a chance Trump was reelected in 2020.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do.
I mean, it was a huge misstep on Trump's part that he was so against.
Well, he told people don't vote. They're not going to count it. And then they didn't vote. It would kind of be like telling the Patriots, not that we need to tell the New England Patriots not to score any points, because they're not going to score them even if they try. But it would kind of be like telling the Boston Celtics, don't start shooting the ball until the fourth quarter, and let's see if you're going to win the game.
Right. I mean, the mentality behind Trump's idea was suggesting that mail-in voting was suspect of fraud, which it wasn't, but it was part of his strategy to kind of call the election into question. The downside with that strategy is your own voters aren't going to be voting by mail, and this was right in the middle of the pandemic when it's critical to be doing that kind of absentee voting or voting by mail.
Well, and not to interrupt you, but
yeah.
just on that point, to kind of supplement you, just unpack that for a minute as a Republican operative, we rank our voters just as Democrats do. You have 4 as your strongest voter, 1 is your weak voter. Both parties have them. Democrats made sure they got those 4 and 3 voters taken care of so they could focus on getting those 2 and 1 voters out. Republicans didn't. And when you have an election day where you have lines down the street, people aren't going to show. I'm a political junkie. You're a political junkie. I'd crawl across glass to vote if it meant doing that. But there are people that don't share in that mentality, and they would be inclined to vote Republican, and Republicans didn't get them out. And then if you have this attitude that did permeate in 2020 from the Republican side, which was don't bother, it's not going to count, then you say, well, why am I even going to bother anyway, right?
Well, it should be pointed out that the largest voting bloc is not Republican or Democrat, but it's the non-voter.
Right, that's very true.
So I mean, it's hard to get people out to vote, even ones that are inclined to one political party or another. But yeah, I mean, non-voters. I mean, non-voters are made up of not just people who are exhausted with politics, but people who are strange single-issue voters who just don't affiliate with any political party. But yeah, that's why the get out the vote is important, because there's a lot of untapped potential for American voters that really Republicans or Democrats just have not been able to crack the code on.
Right. Back to Biden's poll numbers for a moment. Of course, his approval rating is back to the approval rating for a minute. Back to the poll numbers for a minute, I should say. The approval rating is going down. The favorability rating, which was the biggest number I paid attention to in 2020, he had that in spades over Hillary Clinton. I mean, the likability rating, but that number is ticking down considerably.
Yeah.
Now we have the hypothetical matchups.
Sure.
And one of the cases that Governor Ron DeSantis, who seems at this moment fading a little bit, was making was the who stands the best opportunity, the best chance at beating Joe Biden.
Yeah.
And he was trying to make the case it was him.
No.
Well, he came in tied. He came in tied in the recent CBS News poll, 44 to 44. Of course, this is a national poll. I hate national polls. For the purpose of this conversation, we will cite a national poll. But I hate national polls because what I think in Massachusetts doesn't matter. My vote in Massachusetts as a Republican to the Republican nominee, I don't think, no matter who the nominee is, they're going to win Massachusetts. So I hate national polls, but again, for the purpose of the conversation. Donald Trump is currently beating President Biden. I think it was 48-44. Nikki Haley had a significant lead. I think it was almost 10 points over President Biden. The Republican primary seems to be shaping up into a 3-way race with former President Trump, Ambassador Haley, and Governor DeSantis. What direction, from your perspective, taking the left side for a moment, what direction do you see that going in? Because the last little item I'll throw on the table here is Nikki Haley in New Hampshire is only 15 points down on Donald Trump. It's 44 to 29 in the Republican New Hampshire primary.
Right.
Does Nikki Haley stand a chance at actually catching and potentially overtaking Trump in New Hampshire? And what would that do to reset the Republican primary?
Well, to your point, polls
threw a lot there.
No. I'm trying to parse through all of it, but I mean, to your point, polls can only really take you so far, and they're not, it's no crystal ball. You're not going to really get a full answer there. But yeah, Nikki Haley is, I would say, doing impressively in what is essentially the race for second place. I mean, I think there's potential that she could break ground in New Hampshire. But I mean, right now she has all of her eggs in the South Carolina basket, right? Which is the third state to vote. and it's her home state, home field advantage. But I mean, I think that it's a fun little hypothetical, but realistically, this is Donald Trump's nomination. It's his to lose, and he would have to actively try in order to lose that nomination.
Well, one of the things, talk about actively trying, one of the things that came out in recent polls,
Sure.
And I will say, I think she's invested a lot in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
And I think that's why her numbers in New Hampshire are doing well. So I think she spread her eggs around. Interestingly, the eggs are in South Carolina, but also in New Hampshire. And I think it's interesting because DeSantis, his focus has been Iowa.
Yeah.
And he's in a distant second in Iowa. He has not been able to dent President Trump in Iowa.
Yeah, I don't think
quite
DeSantis
like Nikki
has a
Haley.
chance anywhere, realistically.
Right. He doesn't seem to have much of a path.
Because I think the biggest thing, though, is that Ron DeSantis is trying to run in the Trump lane, and Nikki Haley is running in the alternative to Trump lane.
Right.
And that can get her second place, but ultimately, is the Republican Party made up of more pro-Trump voters or more anti-Trump voters? And I think the answer to that is handily pro-Trump voters. I mean, Nikki Haley can only get so far on Lincoln Project ads, I mean, she's not like, I mean, big donors, like the name Coke is thrown out there for backing Haley. And yeah, I think the smart money would be on Haley. I think if the Republicans picked Haley, that would be a much easier general election against Biden than picking Trump. But ultimately, the voters want Trump. And I think that
Well, I do think it'll be interesting to see how it fleshes out because obviously Iowa's a caucus.
Yeah.
And that's a considerably different exercise. I participated in a mock caucus when I went to Iowa a few months ago. So that is a different exercise, and it catches a smaller sample of voters
Sure.
than a primary. And of course, New Hampshire is a northeast light blue state at this point. I'm very reluctant to say it's a toss-up state. It's a tease. Republicans are always
exactly.
a few points behind in
It
New
always
Hampshire.
seems like it's
Always.
just about to break for
And then
Republicans.
it's like
and then-
Lucy
yeah.
pulling the football.
Yeah.
It's always just a few points. So I think it's interesting that Nikki Haley is surging in New Hampshire. Let me backtrack. I think it would be interesting if anybody was surging. Right now, it's obviously Nikki Haley.
Yeah, anyone who's not Trump,
anyone who's
is
not Trump.
not really surging.
To your point about it being Trump's to lose, one of the things that came out in that poll is of the remaining Republican candidates, she was cited as one of the most prepared to assume the presidency.
Sure.
And what was interesting about that is she's running it in the primary against someone who had the presidency.
Yeah.
So folks have watched her, and do you think, and I thought that Trump blowing off the first debate was the right move for him.
Sure, of course. When
I
you're
thought
ahead by infinite points,
Right.
why bother? Yeah.
blowing off the second debate. But now you have a legitimate threat in Nikki Haley surging in a very key early primary state. Could this be, and could blowing off the debates be, if Trump were to not secure the nomination, would we be able to look back on the debates and say, maybe he should have showed up at least to a couple of them to keep command of the stage, keep command of his lead, keep command of the Republican primary?
No.
Because you're convinced he's winning the nomination no matter what.
Yeah, he's winning the nomination no matter what. And there's not a situation where he's on stage with Nikki Haley and people are like, oh, I could have voted either way, but after seeing those debates, Donald Trump is just definitely the guy that is more ready for the presidency. I mean, but Trump is all about vibes, and that's what the voters like. They just kind of like Trump. So he doesn't need to say anything on the debate stage. There's no position where he's like, I have this strong belief on X, Y, or Z.
It wouldn't be him taking positions. It would just be him.
Yeah,
there,
but
being
he is there. He's always in the zeitgeist. He doesn't need to be on a debate stage. I don't think anyone's like, oh man, I loved Trump, but since he wasn't on the debate stage, I kind of forgot about him. No one's forgetting about Donald Trump.
That's true. But he is giving people, though, at least voters, an opportunity. It did become a showcase for the other Republican candidates. ultimately, that he was
Yeah, it's a
absent
fun
from.
little show to watch, but again, it's the race for second. It's who gets the silver medal. I mean,
Yeah,
I would be
I mean,
inclined to say who, like someone jockeying for the position of vice president, but I don't think Donald Trump wants to
He
have
will not-
anything to do with anyone.
He won't pick Nikki Haley.
Yeah.
I don't think he picks anyone in this current field.
Yeah.
That's my gut. That's informed speculation, we shall say.
Sure.
I've had conversations with folks at the Republican National Committee who are close to the former president. So I don't see a scenario where Trump picks anybody in the current field.
Sure.
He should pick Nikki Haley, regardless of what position she comes in.
Republicans should choose Nikki Haley, but you know, it's just not going to happen.
It's it is true. It will be interesting to see though, and I will be curious to see after Iowa, where Trump I think is going to clean up, what the landscape becomes then. Is someone like Governor DeSantis, who, frankly, I know I've talked about it here before. With Ron DeSantis, what was good, in my opinion, about him is he's made Florida a red state. And he did that through utilizing early voting and really working early voting to the GOP advantage in Florida.
I think you might be giving Ron a little too much credit there. I feel like the trends of Florida have always been steadily going more and more red.
It is. He's just helped accelerate it.
I don't
Again,
know. I
not
don't know
really
about
through
him
policy per se,
accelerating. I
but
think
through the use of early voting and other.
I think he did an effective job of taking the temperature and leaning into where the state was already going. I don't think that Ron DeSantis is really the person who has shifted Florida in that direction.
No, I agree with you. It was going in that direction. I think he took it and kicked it even harder than it was already going. Doing that, and what I like about Ron DeSantis is acknowledging early voting.
What I like about Ron DeSantis
What
is not
I
a
like
sentence
about
that
Ron
many people
DeSantis
say.
Is early. He's utilized early voting, and he took advantage of it in Florida, because one of the theories that has permeated through Republican circles is that Republicans won't win elections again because of early voting and voting by mail. And the antithesis to that theory is Florida. Florida was a purple state, toss-up state in 2000, and in 2004, Bush won it both times. 08 in 12.
Well, debatable in 2000.
He
but
won it. He
well,
won them both.
Well,
He won them.
He was given it by the Supreme Court, but that's the
We don't
story.
do election denying here on Uphill Politics, even if it happened before Ian was born. I know I was just joking. But in 08 and 12, Obama won it. So the point is, it was a toss-up state. Then of course Trump, I think, won it by a couple of points in 16. Won it even bigger in 20. Of course, DeSantis in 18 and 22.
Yeah.
My point is, having spoken with the governor and his team, they utilized early voting, and that increased and accelerated. He won Miami-Dade County. I think he's the first Republican to win that county in Florida in 40 or 50 years. So I agree with you. The state was trending.
Yeah.
Right, and it was absolutely trending towards the Republican Party. I just think, if it was going 20 miles an hour, DeSantis has kicked it to 35, 40. And I think it's moving in a quicker direction.
I think a lot of that is just resting on a lot of the culture war stuff that Ron DeSantis has tried to make his big
Well, the demographics of
exclamation
Florida are
point.
different, but I think he's been able to take advantage. To your point about the demographic change, he identified that. He identified where those new Republican voters are, and he got them out to vote in 2022.
Yeah, that's fair.
And that is, for me, what I was looking for on a national level, right?
Yeah.
To go from a candidate who was encouraging people not to vote and not to utilize. And look, I'm an in-person voter. I like it. I like being there. I like talking to the poll workers.
Sure.
I like putting it in the machine. That's what I like to do. That said, though, I live in Massachusetts, and I trust the voting systems that we've put in place in Massachusetts. But the only point I was making with DeSantis is he did that in Florida. I'd like to see that happen on a national level. I'm optimistic that perhaps Nikki Haley or others will be able to harness that program that he put together in Florida, use it on a national level, replicate it in swing states where it's legal, of course.
But it doesn't matter if you're not the person that people want to go out to vote for. Like, yeah, you can hold up early voting and mail-in voting as something that Republicans need to do more effectively. But if you're not someone that Republicans are jazzed about, then, it's kind of a moot point.
Well, but
And Donald Trump is someone who, the only person really in recent times who has effectively motivated the Republican base.
The thing to bear in mind, though, is Democrats get their people out to vote for the Democrat, period. And Republicans, if you just get
Which is
them there.
also a byproduct of Trump as well.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think Trump motivated different population segments. He obviously motivates suburban college-educated women against him.
Yeah.
18 to 29-year-old voters against him.
And think about all of the ground that could have been made up by nominating someone like Haley. Except the problem is that that's still a minority in the Republican Party. It's still a pro-Trump party, and it's still the most energized section of the base.
It is. It most certainly is as of mid-December 2023, but we will see as we move into actual voting. We'll see what goes on. So,
and all of this is basically all around Biden's slacking numbers. And
well, and that's just it. There's an opportunity, and who knows if those numbers are going to improve. I mean, he's taking credit for adding jobs that were already there. You know, the unemployment portion of Bidenomics is my favorite example of figures don't lie, but liars can figure. You had a bunch of jobs that people had.
Sure.
They lost those jobs because of the pandemic,
Yeah.
right? But they were furloughed, they were on unemployment, so your unemployment rate went up. They're now no longer on unemployment. They're back in the jobs that they had before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And the White House is taking credit for creating jobs that were already there that people already held.
You're saying this in like a, can you imagine? But this is exactly what Donald Trump did several years ago.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
is
when
not
he
what
was like,
Trump
oh, I've
did.
created more jobs than anyone after everyone lost their jobs and then more jobs were being created. It's like, yeah, I mean,
No,
that's
the
what
economy
presidents do,
the
is-
economy was slowly, after the 2008 collapse, the economy and those jobs were slowly coming back, and certainly the Trump economy created a lot of jobs. In March of 2020, people were laid off because of the pandemic
Right.
and put on unemployment, which increased the unemployment. Those jobs were returned. I know, I'm sure you know, at least 20 people who lost their job,
Yeah,
then had the job returned
right.
because the job was always there. They were just furloughed for whatever reason the company did it. But now you have the Biden administration claiming, well, we created those jobs. You didn't create those jobs. Those jobs were already there.
That's optics, yo. I mean, like, I don't know what you want me to say here. It's like,
It's
yeah,
figures don't lie, but liars can figure.
Sure, absolutely. But that's the thing is you take the good
It's
figures
disingenuous.
and you just I mean, welcome to politics, if I may.
I usually, and I agree with you on that one, but I usually don't drill into one nearly as much as this one because it's so blatantly disingenuous. Like, we all know people who are laid off because of the pandemic.
right.
Their jobs were still there. They were promised the jobs back. I don't know how many people that were told the job will be there. We're just, we don't know what our cash flow is going to look like. You're going on unemployment. You get the kicker. I know a handful of people that were back to work within 6 to 12 months, but the Biden administration is trying to pretend like they created that. No, if you had that job, I know people who had their job for 20 years, they were furloughed, and then they went back into the job they had for 20 years, and the administration, Biden, is trying to take credit for recreating the job that they already
Yeah,
had.
this is how people run elections.
For a
dude.
job they already had.
Yes.
It already existed.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
And that's why I'm here to counter-program that point, because it's disingenuous.
President, sure, but all of politics is disingenuous. No president is in control of bringing down inflation. But every president will take it as a win when inflation goes down and they say, I have brought down inflation.
I will disagree there a little bit, and it's not just the president that is guilty, and I'm saying president in general, not talking about the specific one.
Sure.
It's not just the president who's culpable for inflation. Congress always shares in that blame. As my political hero and idol Ronald Reagan once said, inflation is the price you pay for free money. So when you're doling out cash in the form of stimulus, which some of it was necessary, but when you're giving that money out, you're going to cause inflation. That is basic economics.
Sure.
So when Trump and the bipartisan Congress in 2020 passed the CARES Act, that certainly helped create and drive up inflation. Biden and ARPA especially, and there's been plenty of economic studies to indicate that ARPA has helped drive up inflation. So as Ronald Reagan said, it was brilliant. Inflation is the price you pay for free money.
Sure.
So I think presidents and Congress do share some of the blame in creating inflation issues.
Yeah.
But-
I just think that it's like Democrats are trying to take wins where they can get them. So it's like
Right.
if the economy
But people
does
aren't buying
well,
it. But people aren't buying it. I think that's why his numbers are still tanking. They're
Oh,
not
I don't think
buying
that.
the
I don't
unemployment
think
thing.
that's why
part
his
of
numbers
it.
are tanking.
I think so. I think it's a part of it, anyway.
I think his numbers, going back to the original point, I think his numbers are tanking because right now he's losing progressives. He's losing people that didn't want to vote for him in 2020.
But they did anyway.
But they did anyway. And now they're saying, well, I had to suck it up and vote for him back then, but now I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And I think realistically, you're going to get a pretty big bounce back with those people. I think those same people are going to have the same
they will.
come to Jesus moment that they had in 2020. But yeah, I mean, I think right now the polls are effectively reflecting that progressives are mad at Biden. And, and that's what fuels a lot of that whole speculation of trying to find some other candidate that's going to appeal to a wider range of the Democratic Party, and you're not going to find that. So
Right.
Biden's the best shot.
He is. Let's switch gears for a moment.
Okay.
One of the things that, as we have a few more minutes left, so I need to be clear as I set this next little segment up.
All right.
By no means do I like George Santos, former congressman from New York. By no means do I think he's good for the Republican Party. However,
Oh boy. I'm
However-
so excited where this however goes.
and I have a list. I got it called up right here.
Oh,
A
boy.
comprehensive list of everything he lied about.
Ooh, I like this.
He lied to donors, used their money to make purchases at Hermes and OnlyFans.
Sure.
For folks who aren't aware of OnlyFans, that's where models can sell risque photos of themselves. He used campaign money.
You explaining what OnlyFans is we need to have sections like that on the
Yes.
program. Yeah.
He used
You
campaign.
clinically explaining.
Yes.
Yeah.
OnlyFans for models to yes. He used campaign money for personal travel and Botox. It should be noted that using your campaign money is illegal on those things. He lied to collect unemployment benefits. Back to that unemployment number. Maybe George Santos. His job was created by Biden because he was elected in 2022. So
You sure? All
But it was
six,
already
all
there.
6 of his jobs. that he's
already
working right now.
there
Yeah,
when he
exactly.
was elected. He committed identity theft.
Oh, that's a fun one.
This is all alleged. This is according to New York Magazine. He allegedly lied to Congress. I'm not going to read the about what. Who knows? He reimbursed himself for loans he did not take.
That's fun.
He lied about where he went to high school. Why?
Yeah.
Why? I don't get that. And where he went to college.
Yeah.
Santos, whose parents immigrated from Brazil, says he attended the Horace Mann School in the Bronx during his first years of high school, but had to leave the prestigious private academy in his senior year because, quote, my parents fell on hard times, which was something that would later become known as the Depression of 2008. But a spokesperson for the school told CNN in December that there was no evidence he attended Horace Mann. Later, he obtained a high school equivalency diploma in college. Here's the thing now. I'm just going to unbox a little bit of these things. If you got a GED, why not own that? That's fine.
Sure.
I mean, it's great. People improving their lives. Why would you lie about that? He never worked on Wall Street. He lied about that. This could go on. This is as I'm scrolling it just goes on forever.
Yeah.
One of the worst ones, in my opinion, is he told folks that his mom died on 9/11. Now, it is true his mother died on September 11th
Of a different year.
of a very different year, 2016.
That's
Telling
it's-
people in New York, he's a
Yeah.
New York congressman. He represents he represented a chunk of New York City.
Yeah.
When you say somebody died on 9/11, that invokes an emotional response. You think of the terrorist attacks.
Yeah.
Not she died on September 11th, 2016. Very sad his mom passed away. We're sorry about that. But the way he worded it, and he knew what he was doing when he worded it. I've done a lot of talking. We're going to have Ian unbox my thoughts on this, though. Republicans were stupid for expelling him from Congress. He is only under indictment. Wait until he is convicted, and then deal with it then. Because functionally speaking, you had a 4-seat majority when you expelled him. Now you're down to 3. Former Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy announced he is resigning at the end of the calendar year 2023. Now you're down to 2.
Yeah.
And Ian, you follow a lot of the national stuff a whole lot more closer than I do now. But you and I both know there's a pretty darn good chance 2 congressmen could resign pass
Sure.
away. Anything can happen.
Well, and another thing is that, like we were talking about with the kind of different factions in the Republican House, you're basically giving more power to those factions because when your majority is that slim,
True.
people like your
very
Matt Gaetz, your Marjorie Taylor Greene, your Freedom Caucus, they can make more kind of demands because they are now so essential because every vote is so essential.
Right.
But still, I mean, they should have gotten rid of George Santos.
I mean, he had to go. He was awful for the Republican brand. And look, I mean, with him and Speaker McCarthy leaving, well, Speaker McCarthy is resigning
Yeah.
on his own terms, to be clear. George Santos did not leave. Governors of those states.
Well,
I'm
actually, if
Gavin
you ask
Newsom-
George Santos, he'd probably say, "Yeah, I actually left of my own volition. They actually
Probably,
never
yes.
expelled me."
Yes, and he's a U.S. Senator with Kirsten Gillibrand and Chuck Schumer. If I'm Governor Gavin Newsom in California, I don't call a special election for Kevin McCarthy's seat. I let that sit vacant. Because that's a Republican seat, right? I mean, that's a safe Republican seat that Kevin McCarthy holds. And if I'm Governor Hochul in New York, I roll the dice. That's a D+1 seat, I think. So it's a toss-up, but it
Sure.
leans slightly Democrat.
Yeah.
If I'm the Democrats, first of all, if I'm the Democrats in Congress, I'm like, you want to get rid of your speaker? Yeah, okay, bye-bye.
Sure.
And then from the Democrats, you want to expel one of you? Oh, okay, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Now, if you're Democrats and you're Governor Gavin Newsom, you're Governor Kathy Hochul, I believe it's Kathy, of New York, I wouldn't call a special election,
Sure.
functionally speaking.
I mean, I think
You're not winning the California seat. That's a Republican seat.
yeah, that's fair. But yeah, I mean, it's a numbers game, and there's not really a right answer. And in those circumstances, it's kind of just, pardon me for the naivety, but it's more important to just kind of do the right thing. And
Well, that's true.
you
And,
know.
and that's why I said he needs to go. I do firmly believe, though, that he's under indictment. Let the judicial system play itself out. Once he gets convicted, which he's going to be convicted of something, once he's convicted, then you deal with it. And to your point about doing the right thing, I agree. And I again, I agree he needed to go.
Sure.
Right? I don't agree on the timing because this all gets down to another issue that I have with it. He was elected.
Yeah.
Voters chose him
Right.
to be their representative in Congress. And yes, I know they have rules, and I know that they make their own rules,
Well,
and that's
let's
fine.
also keep in
but
mind
like, who
that-
is the rest of Congress to say, even though you were elected, you're not worthy to hold that seat?
Let's keep in mind that people elected, or they voted for a much different George Santos than who they
Wow.
elected.
That is true.
So I mean, there's certainly a case to be made that it's not just Congress overriding the will of the people. It's,
But then
you know,
let them vote him out. Let them vote him out.
so you want that same district in New York to essentially hold an election to see if George
No.
Santos would be expelled?
No. What I'm saying is he was elected in 2020. He's up in 2024. It's only a 2-year seat. Let them decide. Vote him out.
But that's still a bunch more votes that he can take in the meantime.
But it
like-
is an indictment to me overall. I mean, George Santos, I think, represents, that's why I wanted to talk about it, and maybe we'll carry this over into another episode, because I think it represents a fascinating issue that exists in politics and government today. First of all, you have a total lack of local media now,
Yeah.
right? That is nationwide.
Sure.
So a candidate like him wasn't really properly vetted
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah.
You made a decent point. The information and facts on him have changed, but he is still elected. So with that changed information, would he have been reelected? I don't know. He was going to be primaried, right? So
Sure.
It's a Democrat seat. It's a presidential year. So really good chance. He did run in 2020, I believe, as well. So
Under the same name?
under the same name.
Okay.
So you had 2 cycles for this guy to be vetted.
Sure.
In New York City, you have the New York Times.
Yeah. It is bananas to me that no one just like checked.
Even looked into it, right? And it gets to this point where, and I talk about it often, I'm a county commissioner. I believe in local government. That's how this country was set up. It was local government, self-governance, and you had local media, you had people that looked into these things. They don't look into anything anymore.
Sure.
And what you had happen was you had this guy who is clearly acting in his own movie in George Santos, who told a story.
An amazing movie, by the way. I would buy a ticket to that.
Right. That might be Oscar nominated. But like, it's such an indictment on everything. Like, people voted for him. So then who are the other 434 members of Congress who say, well, we don't deem you worthy of being here anymore? My perspective is he's not. He shouldn't be there. But he was also elected. So like, and I understand they use it at very rare occasions, and his occasion was, I would say it rose to the occasion that it needed to be addressed.
Yeah.
But now it gets down to timing. And again, I keep falling back on you have the New York Times, which, again, the New York Times is focusing on a myriad of other things.
Sure.
I mean, they just outsourced their sports department, right? And I don't know why that kind of gets glossed over. People, well, who cares? Just sports. New York City has 2 Major League Baseball teams, 2 football teams, 2 basketball teams, 1.5 hockey teams, right? Rangers, and then you got the Islanders. They outsource their sports department because they don't want to do it. So like, and I'm not picking on the New York Times because it's a liberal publication. I'm picking on the New York Times because it's like, how did that happen? How did George Santos go completely unchecked by what is supposedly all the news that's fit to print in the newspaper of record for the city of New York, the city, and one of the newspapers of record for the country? Yeah. I think it's a great indictment on, when you really unpack George Santos and pick it apart, it's an indictment on a whole host of things. Districts too big, people not vetting, people not, media not vetting. It's to me, that was a fascinating part of it all, was how it happened in this modern age.
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of it, though, is in this kind of, in the era of Trump, you can kind of go on just vibes. And you don't really need to cite your sources. You just kind of go up to the podium, say what you think people are going to like hearing, and then have that decide if you get elected or not, rather than,
But he does have a First Amendment right to do that. I think why he needed to go was he's clearly committed crimes.
Sure.
Getting up there and saying whatever people want to hear is...
Yes, lying is not good, fraud is criminal, yes, sure.
Right, and there's that line, right?
Yeah.
He's a liar. Frankly, that would not... Him telling white lies or blatant lies...
Sure.
would not be a reason to expel.
No.
If we were expelling
members of Congress,
exactly. We'd have no Congress if we were excelling.
Yeah.
All 535 members of the House and Senate would be gone.
Yeah.
For virtue of the fact of telling a lie or a white lie. He's obviously gone because he committed multiple layers of fraud.
Right.
Criminal activity, fraud. But again, he has the First Amendment right to say whatever he wants to get elected. Again, I was just complaining about Biden saying whatever he wants to try and get reelected. I found it fascinating how the whole thing unfolded.
Well, and that's an issue that Trump's facing right now in his legal case, which is that he does have a First Amendment right to question the election, but at the same time,
how far can that go?
Right, exactly. And he's always kind of
courts are going to decide
pushing
that.
against the fence to test the limits.
Courts are going to decide that. As somebody who years ago, my dad was on a cable committee, and somebody wanted to do a very unflattering broadcast mocking a local selectman.
Okay.
And they had a powwow to discuss it, and her answer to him was, the First Amendment's a bitch. And the First Amendment does protect, it should, as it should.
Sure.
Speech you don't like, speech you like, it protects everything, and that's a good thing. We only have a couple of minutes left, Ian.
Okay.
It is the holiday season. So in these waning moments, with Christmas and Hanukkah, whatever holiday you may celebrate, what is one Christmas present that you remember getting? Like, you knew it was coming, or you asked for it, you wanted it, and it came. Because I have a very specific answer for this, and I'm curious to know, like, what is that one Christmas present that you were just like, yes?
Ooh, you really hit me with the gotcha questions now. I'm not sure. I
thought this would be easy.
Yeah, you would think, but I don't have a good or interesting answer really. Because I don't remember, Jared. I don't remember the gifts I just remember the time spent with family.
Would you look at that? I will tell you, Christmas 1996, Nintendo 64, Mario 64. I opened that and totally, now for the record, I love all the time I spent with my family on Christmas, but I remember that Christmas, I didn't even want to go to my grandparents. I wanted to stay home all day playing Mario 64. I still have that console to this day. It still works.
Oh, yeah. I got my N64. Yeah.
I remember that Christmas vividly. I think maybe finally it came to the realization that my grandparents probably got me some more games to play as well. And so I was like, okay, good, we can go. But I remember that Christmas present very vividly over the years. Now, of course, in my mid-30s, I asked for a lawnmower this year.
Sure.
Yeah, you ask for the functional gifts that you need that are necessary.
But it's a Mario lawnmower, so you know.
That's a great idea. I should outfit it as Mario.
Yeah.
Put like
you could make it like a little Mario Kart kind of thing. So at the bottom of the
there
lawnmower.
it is. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think I got Mario. No, when did Mario Kart come out? We might have to Google that off air before we wind down. Christmas. What are your plans?
I'm going to visit my parents who now live down south.
Great. Very good. I will be visiting my grandparents. I will be seeing my extended family, cousins, nieces, nephews. Well, niece and nephew, singular at this point. But it's great. So, well, as you can tell, if you're just tuning in now, that this was a taping around the Christmas season, the holiday season. But you have been listening to or watching Uh-Oh Politics, a production of Abington Cam. I am Jared Valenzola. He is Ian Deming. We probably won't see you again until 2024. So until then, Merry Christmas, Happy belated Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy holidays, any holiday you celebrate. Very Happy New Year. We'll see you in 2024.